73.3%. The NFL's top experts have a 73.3% consensus record this season. But here's the kicker. They're only hitting 36.8% against the spread. Today, we're diving into NFL Week 6 predictions, where the biggest spreads of the season meet potential Super Bowl previews, and why expert consensus might be the worst way to make picks. By the end of this episode, you'll understand how to read between the lines of predictions and spot the real value in this week's massive slate. So let's start with the elephant in the room. What makes Week 6 so special that we're seeing these massive spreads?
Week 6 is where the NFL season really starts to separate the wheat from the chaff. According to CBS Sports, this is when teams begin to separate themselves as either playoff contenders or someone already looking ahead to 2026. And we're seeing that reflected in the betting lines.
Right, and we've got Green Bay as 14.5-point favorites over Cleveland. That's the biggest spread of the season so far.
Exactly. And that tells us something fascinating about market perception. The Packers aren't necessarily 14.5 points better than the Browns on a neutral field, but the market thinks Cleveland is completely broken right now.
That's such an interesting way to think about it. What other massive spreads are we seeing this week?
Well, we've got some really intriguing contrasts. On one end, you have that massive Packers spread, but then Sunday Night Football features Chiefs versus Lions with just a 5-point spread. CBS Sports is calling it a potential Super Bowl preview.
Wait, so we're going from the biggest spread of the season to one of the smallest on the same weekend?
Exactly. And that range tells the whole story of where the NFL stands right now. You've got teams like Cleveland that the market has completely given up on, and then you have these elite matchups where it's essentially a coin flip.
Speaking of coin flips, let's talk about Monday Night Football. We're getting a doubleheader with some interesting storylines.
The Monday night slate is fascinating. Buffalo travels to Atlanta as 4.5-point favorites, and then Washington hosts Chicago with the exact same 4.5-point spread. But here's what's really interesting. The Bears are looking for revenge after last year's Fail Mary, according to the Action Network.
Oh man, the Fail Mary. That's such a perfect example of how these storylines become part of the prediction narrative.
And that brings up something really important about NFL predictions. There's this whole kayfabe element, like in professional wrestling. The storylines matter almost as much as the actual football sometimes.
Kayfabe in NFL predictions? That's a wild comparison, but I can see it. Explain that more.
Think about it. We all know these predictions are educated guesses at best, but we get emotionally invested in the narratives. Josh Allen's revenge tour, Baker Mayfield entering MVP conversations, the Chiefs dynasty continuing. It's entertainment as much as analysis.
That's actually brilliant. And speaking of Baker Mayfield, what's the deal with him suddenly being in MVP conversations?
According to Bovada, Baker Mayfield has entered the MVP odds conversation, which is absolutely wild when you think about how he was basically written off just 2 years ago. The Bucs are 4-1, and he's been clutch in late-game situations.
It's crazy how quickly narratives can shift in the NFL. But let's get into the actual predictions. What are the experts saying about this week?
So NFL.com has 5 experts making picks, and their records are all over the place. The best straight-up record is Dan at 68.8%, but against the spread, the best is Gennaro at 53.8%. That's barely better than flipping a coin.
Wait, 53.8% against the spread is the best? That's not great.
Right, and that's the dirty secret of NFL predictions. These are smart people who know football inside and out, but beating the spread consistently is incredibly difficult. The sportsbooks are just too good at setting lines.
So if the experts can barely beat the spread, what should regular fans be looking for in these predictions?
Great question. Look for the reasoning, not just the picks. Like Ali from NFL.com picking the Bills over the Falcons, he admits he'd rather be wrong backing Josh Allen than fade him. That's honest analysis.
That's such a human element to it. He's basically saying some players are just too good to bet against, regardless of the numbers.
Exactly. And there's actually data backing that up. Since 2018, only 3 quarterbacks have a win percentage of 700 or higher following a loss. Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, and Josh Allen. All at 750 or better.
Wow. So there's actually statistical evidence for the don't bet against elite QBs theory.
Right, but here's the twist. Jackson and Mahomes have already dropped back-to-back games this season. So the question becomes, is Allen next?
That's the kind of insight that makes predictions interesting. It's not just about this week, it's about patterns and trends.
And speaking of patterns, here's something wild about Thursday Night Football this year. Home teams are 1-4 against the spread. That completely flips conventional wisdom about home field advantage on short rest.
Wait, that's counterintuitive. You'd think the home team would have an advantage with the short week.
Right? But maybe the short week actually hurts the home team more. They can't prepare as thoroughly, and the visiting team is more focused because they know they're in a tough spot.
That's a perfect example of how the data can reveal things that go against our assumptions. What about this Thursday's game specifically?
Thursday night, we've got Eagles at Giants, and it's a powder keg, according to Bovada. The Eagles are 7-point favorites, but they just blew a 17-point lead to Denver. Meanwhile, the Giants' rookie QB, Jackson Dart, is struggling with turnovers.
So we've got a reigning Super Bowl champion that's showing cracks against a rookie quarterback who's having growing pains. That sounds like chaos waiting to happen.
Exactly, and that's where the 1-4 home team trend becomes really interesting. The Giants are getting 7 points at home, but if that pattern holds, maybe they're the play.
It's fascinating how these micro trends can influence how you view individual games. What about some of the other key matchups this week?
Well, we've got Jets at Broncos in London, and this is where the storylines get really interesting. The Jets are 0-5, and according to ESPN, their defense has been the problem. 0 takeaways and only 3 sacks in the past 4 games.
0 takeaways? For a defense that was supposed to be elite, that's brutal.
And here's the kicker. They're playing in London against a Broncos team that's only allowed 5 sacks all season. So the Jets' biggest weakness is going up against the Broncos' biggest strength.
That's the kind of matchup analysis that actually matters. It's not just about records, it's about how teams' strengths and weaknesses align.
Exactly. And there's another interesting wrinkle. Bo Nix was held to only 60 passing yards against the Jets last season. That's the only time in his career he's been held under 130 passing yards.
So we've got this weird dynamic where the Jets' defense has been terrible this year, but they historically match up well against Nix specifically.
Right, and that's where prediction gets really tricky. Do you trust the current form or the historical matchup? Most experts would probably go with current form, but maybe that's why they're only hitting 53.8% against the spread.
That's such a good point. Maybe the contrarian play is to look for those historical matchups that go against current narratives.
And speaking of narratives, let's talk about the Atlanta situation. NFL.com's Ali admits he's perplexed by the Falcons. They shut down the Vikings one week, then lose 3-0 to Carolina the next.
3-0 to Carolina after shutting down Minnesota? That's the kind of inconsistency that makes predictions impossible.
Exactly, and that's where the human element comes in. Ali says he'd rather be wrong backing Josh Allen than fade him, even though he thinks the Falcons can win. It's about emotional comfort as much as analysis.
That's so honest, though. Most experts would never admit that their picks are influenced by who they're comfortable betting against.
And maybe that honesty is more valuable than the actual pick. Because at the end of the day, we're all just trying to make sense of chaos. The NFL is designed to be unpredictable.
Right, and that brings us back to the kayfabe concept. We know it's unpredictable, but we still get invested in the storylines and predictions.
Exactly. And maybe that's okay. The entertainment value of predictions isn't just about being right, it's about the analysis, the debate, the storylines. It's part of what makes football fun.
That's a really healthy way to think about it. So what should fans take away from all these Week 6 predictions?
Look for the reasoning behind the picks, not just the picks themselves.